Chapter 5, The Old Man in a Hut. Dogan Ronda. The good thing about being with a dozen Nivens was that they're always ready to move about. Like this morning. When I woke up, they were already out and about, too polite to ask me to get my sorry hubbub's ass up. I almost threw a fit when it struck me how long I had slept. I walked to a pond nearby to cool off, scooping water with my hands for a drink. I splashed the remaining water in my hands against my face. Only the gods knew how long before we would find another water source. "Let's go," I said, wiping the drops of water off my brow. The Nivens disappeared into thin air as though to acknowledge my instructions. I don't think I would ever get used to the way their powers worked. Once we began the journey, it was as if I was alone again. I could barely hear their footsteps, and it was somewhat freaking me out. They could easily betray me, and I wouldn't know how to defend myself. This useless power of mine was driving me crazy. I squinted at the twin moons, somehow blaming them that I had to be born with such useless power. I frowned at myself. On the ground I was about to step on, a sturdy stem sprouted, and from it, a rose bloomed as though to taunt me. Stupid power. The gods were so unfair. I was with that thought when I saw some movement to my right, and a vine suddenly shot up from nowhere. "What the?" I grumbled. I tensed and urged the vine to grow. To my amazement, it did. Who knew I could make the vines grow now? Is my mind playing new tricks on me? I stopped dead in my tracks, spread my hand upright, and slowly urged another vine to grow. Cratty hobbubass. The vines sprouted like crazy. Aghast, I pumped my fists up in the air, and a wall of vines shot up, blocking our path. "Dogan," someone murmured. "I don't think now's the time to play with your power, Manny Ren," the taller Niven said. "Huh?" I said. I didn't know that I could do that. "Well, the gods must be blessing you. That is one extreme power," Manny Ren continued, chuckling slightly before showing himself. "I bet you could use it at a more appropriate time." I nodded slowly. "Probably. It's taking us too long to catch up with the children," he said. "So if I may, let's continue with the journey and stop blocking our paths with your vines." Manny Ren then continued to slash at the vines that shrouded our paths like curtains. One by one, the vines fell as I assumed the other Nivens joined in to tear down the vines. When none were left standing, we continued the journey. If I could get over my surprise, I swore I would have jumped up and yelled. I was never a fan of my power before, but then again, I never experimented with it. So maybe this discovery was the silver lining to all my self-doubt. I banged on the door of a rather small and dingy hut. If not for the faint scent of burned cooking, I would have ignored it altogether. I waited and looked back. The Nivens were behind me, but I couldn't see them anymore. They were good bodyguards like that. Finally, the door opened slightly, and an old man peered through the gap. "Yes," he asked casually. "Master." "Liso Benfont," he added. "Master Liso, I am a soldier, looking for 3 children," I said. "I would like to know if you happen to see them pass by here." The old man's face became unreadable. He stared at me before opening the door widely without offering to welcome me in. "3 children, you say?" I nodded. "A tall boy, a fat boy, and a charming girl?" I nodded eagerly. "Tell me, what is your business with the children?" This man was not going to make my task any easier. I heaved a deep breath before answering. The tall boy was left to me by his mother. I am his guardian. If the old man doubted my sincerity, it didn't show on his face. "You don't look anything like him. Why would the mother make you his guardian?" "She was." I thought of the perfect word to describe my relationship with Lamare. "A good friend." "Come in," the man said. I went inside without looking back. The man looked so old that I had no qualms of him doing anything bad to me. I could easily defend myself, I assured myself. And yet, this old man was gifted with a high forehead that gave me the impression that he was cunning enough to do so. Or maybe, He only has a high forehead because he was still balding. Please have a seat, Master Liso said. I looked around and found a bench made of decaying wood. This household needed some major refurbishing. I sat casually, and the bench creaked under my weight. I studied the old man's face. This was supposedly what I was good at, to discern if the people I talked to were lying or hiding something. There was no better time to put this talent to good use but now. Tell me about your relationship with the children, he said, without even fidgeting as he sat opposite my chair. Kino Emerk is the son of my friend. His mother, I paused, wondering if I could say it without feeling any pain this time, died. This left me as the boy's only family. Master Liso remained silent as though trying to measure me the way I was with him. But you're not blood relatives, he said. I shook my head. Not at all. What made the mother trust you? That made me uncomfortable. I vowed to her that I would protect her boy. Wearing the palace's insignia, do you expect me to believe that? Darn it. I knew I should have removed the orange and blue royal colors from my clothes. I used to serve the palace, I said, quickly recovering. Used to? A curious answer, he said. I'm sure you have heard about the last Akean Wine Festival. The one that left thousands of Akeans dead? Who hasn't? Even the deaf heard the news, he said. The emperor ordered the woman's, I stammered, son to die. How could I not defect? It's hard to trust anybody nowadays, he said. And yet you invited me in, I replied. Suddenly, the decaying wood transformed, and wood covered my feet up to my limbs. I wouldn't be able to stand up even if I wanted to. I can make you defenseless, Master Liso said, anytime. I gaped at the old man, itching to reach for the hilt of my sword. The only problem was that the magical wood encased it. I am not the enemy, Master Liso, I said, my voice hoarse. And yet, right now, would I be wrong to presume that you want to reach for your sword and slash my neck? My face felt hot. I met his gaze, but I wasn't able to say another word. Tell me about the other children, he asked. The other boy is Kino's friend. The girl saved Kino's life, I said. Those were the only things I knew of them. At that, the old man raised his eyebrows. The girl saved the boy's life? I nodded, irritated about my situation. My size dwarfed him, and yet there I was, defenseless as a pup. Talk about stupidity and trusting people too much. I must be more careful next time. They went south, the old man offered. Could I really trust his words? South meant Direla, Loondu, and other provinces. Where in the south? I have no idea, he said. The boy's life is in danger. If I don't get to him quickly, the wrong sort of people could capture him and bring him to the emperor, I hissed. Wrong people who still wear the royal insignia? He leered at me. I tried to move my feet but failed. I twisted in my seat, but I only toppled down onto the floor. The wood that coated my lower body was suddenly gone, and I jumped to my feet. Ready to fight. There's no need to threaten me with your sword. You know what I can do. I retreated slowly. Thank you for the information, Master Liso. No matter how inconveniently you gave it to me, I said. I left without another word, unsure if I could trust the man's words. South? Maybe it would have been better if I hadn't overslept and followed the children faster. That way, I wouldn't have to rely on this man's words. South, I muttered under my breath as I started walking away, hoping that the Nivens heard me clearly. I was still seething, annoyed that an old man managed to disarm me so quickly. I turned to look back at the man's hut and saw him staring at me from the window. His face was concerned. Did he tell me the truth that the children went south? Why would he protect them from me? What did he know? Then a slow, lazy smile stretched across the old man's lips as though he was taunting me. At that moment, I knew he was playing with my head. Head east, I grumbled. This old man was lying all along. I turned and headed in the other direction. Then I hurriedly continued along, wondering how many miles separated me from Kino. I made a mental note to myself not to trust an old, toothless, bald man ever again.